where are we like connected, like the trauma whole situation? Like, where are we like
trauma bonding?
Yeah.
Oh. It's not trauma bonding. So trauma bonding is Stockholm syndrome in the clinical literature. Now, when people misuse the term trauma bonding, it doesn't get me going as much as, say, gaslighting or PTSD or OCD, these kinds of things. There's not a lot of people who have experienced trauma bonding who even refer to it that way. They will refer to it as Stockholm. You know, it's when you're in an abuse situation, you're trauma bonding with your abuser. That's what trauma bonding is. I understand why the lay public would think that it means bonding about one's trauma. I have trauma, you have trauma, we are now bonding. It also is an accusation of patriarchy and anti-emotion. When people use the term trauma bonding, they're usually saying it's a bad thing. They were in a conflict and Ray wanted to leave and he prevented her physically from leaving the apartment. And this is all caught on camera. He was chasing her and she was trying to get away. She repeatedly over maybe a couple minutes was like, let go of me, leave me alone, let go of me, leave me alone, let go of me, leave me alone. And then even warned him, if you don't stop touching me, I'm going to hit you. And then they cut to black, and then later on they refer to the fact that she had punched him. And then the whole storyline was how she was abusive. I read a lot of people commenting how horrible Ray was. And I'm like, did you not see the scene? She was defending herself. Like, she was being abused. She was being imprisoned. I wish that we had a culture that frowned upon people who would DM cast members on the show. It's one thing to yell at the screen. It's one thing to post something on Reddit. It's another thing to personally go after them without taking a beat and saying, maybe I have a distorted idea of what actually happened. Maybe it's not my place. People just attack people in their DMs. I'm like, one, grow up. Two, you think you have enough information to say these kinds of things. Three, these are just regular people, usually. I mean, people get death threats. I feel like our society almost encourages it or something. It's some sort of right that people feel like they have. And maybe in 20 years, there will be frowning on this of like, hey, you can yell at the screen, but don't DM the person. Leave them alone. People with borderline, they have abandonment and betrayal traumas, and then even when there isn't abandonment or rejection or hostility from other people, they will see it where it doesn't exist, or they'll see a tiny little bit of it and then they will blow it up. They will feel as if they're being slighted and they will feel righteous in their anger towards you. But like on the internet, there's a growing term called quiet borderline that doesn't do this. This implies that people that aren't labeled quiet borderline are loud borderlines, if you will. And I don't like that connotation. The quiet borderline community, I think, likes to hold on and retain the accurate, helpful label of borderline while trying to signal to other people, like, I'm not a jerk face to other people. And, you know, that's great. But I think what we need to do is just take away the stigma from borderline altogether so that no one has to resort to another label to protect themselves from the stigma. There is a personality disorder associated with 3-6, which is paranoid personality disorder. In a nutshell, is someone who is very, very convinced that people are against them and are immune to data otherwise. And they will inject thoughts into your head about thoughts that are against them and persecutory, like you're out to get me, you're scheming to ruin my life, or you're trying to bring me down, you're trying to sabotage me, often to close relationships. You're, 0 to 5 and you're having all these urges to share how you're feeling, to get some attunement and attention and love and warmth and understanding, and you are frequently being frustrated with that. Over time, the child learns, look, I'm learning how the world works, I'm learning how to talk, I'm learning how to walk, and I'm learning the emotional landscape, which involves a denying of my feelings. No one cares about my feelings. In fact, I have to really remember that no one cares about my feelings, because when my feelings come up, I need to refrain myself from actually expressing my feelings, because I'm not going to get my needs met. So I have to really beat it into my head. Remember, remember, remember. No one cares about your feelings. No one cares about your feelings. Then later on in life, you are experiencing maybe the normal ups and downs of relationships, and your partner does care about you. You are seeing it as if they just do not care about your feelings, because that belief system was locked in when you're growing up. It's well known that the abusers will learn how to language things to make it seem like they're the actual victim. They're able sometimes to very easily get out of being accused of domestic violence because they know what to say. When the police arrive, say the victim calls the police, they sometimes, not usually to be honest, but sometimes will know exactly what to say when the police arrive, maybe even know how to provoke the victim to having an emotional breakdown, and then the police arrive and they see a calm, cool, collected person. They might become really quite sophisticated in their ability to trick evaluators, police officers, the justice system. You would have to consider that when you're taking someone's word for it, right? I've treated many couples and many individuals like this. It's tragic all the way around, right? I know the temptation is to say like, oh, Johnny Depp is a jerk face, or oh, Amber Heard is lying. And, you know, okay, but what I see are two people traumatized by terribly unfair, horrible childhoods who are just trying to make their way, are being frequently triggered, drawn to substances because they numb out from that. The substances get out of control. They are desperate for closeness and security. They're triggering each other. And in the end, it was tragic for everybody. Like, yeah. Sometimes I say this, maybe I'm just an old man, but in kindergarten, they taught us not to lie. You remember that? Maybe preschool, right? Don't lie. Don't lie. Unless it's a matter of life and death or something. One, it's wrong and immoral to do that. You're harming another person knowingly. Two, you're going to ruin your relationships that way and no one's going to want to be your friend. So stop it when you go through a divorce and you have kids. This is a very important truce that you have with your partner is we will not ridicule each other or criticize each other around the kids. If I have a criticism about you that I need to vent about, I'll talk with my therapist, my parents, my friends. I will not talk with my kids and I won't let them hear that stuff because it will totally infect their relationship with you. And it'll start this arms race where I'm trying to get my kids to think I'm the better one and then you're trying to do that and everyone loses, particularly the kids. Kids need to believe that their parents are good or they need people to get along because they're concerned about themselves. If they see you bad-mouthing your other partner, your kids have learned a very, very important lesson, which is if you're going to do that to that person, then you could do it to me, and that is terrifying. There's always going to be something about your partner that will annoy the crap out of you. In fact, research shows that. For the best of couples that stay married, are happily married relative to other people, they will always report there's a set of things that they fight about with their partner and they never resolve. That research by John Gottman and colleagues in Seattle, one of the myths that research dispelled was that good couples don't fight or good couples resolve their problems. And a lot of therapists actually believed that. And it's a myth. Though actual couples that are doing well and satisfied, when you ask them, there's always something that annoys the crap out of them. Whenever we're in a fight with our partner, our distress level will go up, even if you don't notice it. In fact, most people don't even notice as their distress level is going up. Whenever you're in a tense conversation, you have to assume that you're probably starting to become distressed, fight or flight reaction, this kind of thing, which makes us more negative. It makes it harder for us to make decisions. It paints everything in a very negative light. What the other person is saying, we're more likely to be triggered. In that state, past a certain threshold, it's nearly impossible, if not impossible, to have a functional conversation in that state. And so you must take a break. You must be able to say, let's give it. And one of the things to beat into your head is we can talk about this in 30 minutes. We don't have to talk about it right now. How about we take 30 minutes, take a break, relax. If we feel the same as I do now, then I'll just pick it up where I left off. But if I feel differently, maybe I'll be able to have a better conversation.
Her saying no at the altar, people are like cheering her on, and like it's like that's great and all, but like, you know, she wanted to say yes to.
Yeah, that's awful that people would cheer. I don't know. It's like we're watching an MCU movie, like a Iron Man movie, and there's the villain. And occasionally there are characters like that. These are real human beings. Have you never been in a messy situation relationship-wise? Have you never made a mistake? Have you never been a jerk face to your partner, particularly when you're younger and you're stressed out? If you ever did, how would it feel if there were millions of people cheering your partner on as they reject you? Yeah, you get him. Some characters, some cast members, I would say, well, I don't know, maybe. But Shane, really? Like, And then in the ancient Greeks, actually, that's where we get the word histrionic from, is hister, which is the word for uterus. They used to believe, I kid you not, that the uterus was traveling around the body in the woman, and that caused her to have various different problems. The experience of the child is, I'm thirsty for attention, because all children are, and I'm not getting enough, and and there's various different solutions that children will resort to in order to get their love and attention and attunement needs, and one of them is just to amp up their attention-seeking behavior. This actually locks in to your personality. That's why I call it a personality disorder. It's not just like a choice you make or a temporary mood issue. It's something that is ingrained in your personality because you developed it theoretically when you were very young. After you leave your house and you actually bump into people who will give you enough attunement and attention and love, you actually assume that they won't, and you just start to seek attention. We have this notion that abusive people are monsters, and some are, but very few are. In fact, a lot of people who commit abusive behavior are very emotionally aware and very sensitive, very loving. The reason why we want to know this is, one, if you're a clinician, so you can break yourself of the myths, so you can actually assess people accurately and help them. But also, if you're in a relationship with someone and they're abusing you and they're also very loving, it might be very confusing because you have this notion that, well, they don't fit the prototype or the stereotype of someone who's abusive, and it will deny you the opportunity to recognize what's really happening. The other thing is that if you are a loving person with empathy, that doesn't mean that you aren't abusive sometimes.
Honestly, I remember we went to a therapist and she's like, if y'all are going through each other's phones, then you shouldn't be together. And I'm like, you're right. I need to trust this man and he needs to trust me.
All right, so hopefully the therapist didn't say something that definitively. This is an issue that I will sometimes worry about, that my clients will interpret it a certain way or take something out of context and then just repeat these things as if I had said them. And I'm always worried, like, oh no. So who knows what the therapist really said, but at least the way that she interpreted it was that if you're looking through each other's phones, you shouldn't be together. No good therapist would ever say anything like that. No good therapist would ever say, because of this, you shouldn't be together. What I would say, and what a lot of therapists would say, is that looking through each other's phones is a trust violation, and it's an indication that you are worried that you're going to lose your partner, and you're going to a solution to solve that problem that isn't functional.
Just watching their date back, it makes so much sense now. You guys do have a lot in common. Watching it unfold, I could tell immediately when Jake and I moved in that he wanted to be back with Ray.
That's April's story, and Jake is like, no, that's not true. I could imagine that not being true. And it's a common thing that we will do. Maybe give you a hypothetical. You are being broken up with, it's a difficult breakup, it's hurtful. You start replaying in your mind different events and you start thinking, oh, did he cheat on me? Was that what happened? And there was that one thing that happened, that must have been it. There's a temptation, I think, to look to these big events to explain what happened, because when we're dumped, it feels like, wait, what happened? I don't understand. We had love for each other. Something must have occurred. I need a simple story, because a complicated one or an unknown one doesn't feel very good. So people out there, challenge yourself. When you feel like using the word toxic, use a more precise word. It's same with abusive, or even a word like racist or even sexist. Certainly those words are important, but they're so broad and overused by a minority of people. I don't have a precise understanding of what people are referring to when they use those words. And so you could use the word and then clarify it, toxic in this way or something. For us, when we're using language, it helps us to understand what's happening when we're more precise about what is happening. But also, it helps you to communicate. If your partner or someone in your life is doing something that you don't like and you're just like, that person's toxic, it's a way of just discounting the whole thing instead of being more precise, so you can actually tell them. If you say, you're toxic, what are they supposed to do with that? But if you say, I feel belittled by you often, then, maybe the person will actually be able to change. You'll have people, because of relational traumas, they won't even really know how they feel, or they will discount how they feel, thus will endure a relationship much longer than they would otherwise if they were in touch with their feelings. They'll be in a relationship and they'll be in this state where it's like, oh, there's some bad things about this relationship, but there's a lot of good things, and the bad things aren't that bad, but at what point is it bad enough that you're supposed to leave a relationship? And there is no right answer to that question. It's a matter of exploration. It's a matter of trying to understand understand your own lens. A big part of our inability to see relationships accurately, so to speak, is our past traumas imposing lenses that are biased or overreactive or even in denial of certain things. And so once you evaluate that and you work on that and remove that as a barrier to you seeing a situation, then you're much more likely to have a decision that is more conducive to your needs and the other person's needs.